So today, we're going to crack open this really powerful framework for learning called the PACER method. It's all about turning that passive reading we sometimes do into real, actual knowledge that you can use.
Has this ever happened to you? You spend a good hour reading, you get to the end of the chapter, you close the book, and poof, it's gone. You were looking at the words, but none of it really sunk in. It's like the information just passed right through you.
And really, this all comes down to one big idea, the difference between just consuming information versus actually digesting it. See, consuming is passive. That's when your goal is just getting through the pages. But digesting, that's active. That's about processing the knowledge so it sticks, and more importantly, becomes something you can actually use later on.
But here's the thing, and it's really good news. If you've ever had that empty reading feeling, there's nothing wrong with your brain at all. The problem is with your system. And the great thing about a broken system is that we can fix it. We just need the right set of tools.
And that's where the PACER checklist comes in. Just think of it as a super simple, actionable guide that you can use every single time you sit down to learn something new, whether you're studying for a test or just reading a book for fun.
Okay, so the big idea here is that you gotta treat every single learning session like a two-stage process. There's the consuming part, and then there's the digesting part. So if you've got an hour, don't just read for 60 minutes straight. Maybe read for 30 minutes, and then spend the other 30 actively working with what you just read. You're aiming for a balance between intake and process.
So how do we actually do this digesting part? Well, step one is you're going to become a kind of information detective. As you read, for every paragraph, for every little section, you're just going to quickly ask yourself, what kind of information is this? And give it a label. Is it P, A, C, E, or R?
All right, so let's break down what these letters actually stand for. P is procedural. Think of it like a recipe or any kind of how-to guide. A is for analogous. That's that little aha moment when a new idea reminds you of something you already get. C is for conceptual, which is the big what and why behind an idea. E is for evidence. You know, the stats, the case studies, the proof. And finally, R is for reference, those little specific facts you just have to memorize. But, just slapping a label on something, that's not enough. The real magic, the part that makes this whole thing work, is in step 2. This is where every single label you make triggers a very specific action. It's how you go from just being a passive consumer to an active digester.
All right, first up, P for procedural. This is pretty straightforward. It's any time you're reading how to do something. It could be a set of steps, a new technique, a coding tutorial, whatever.
And here's the big rule. When you hit procedural info, you have to stop reading. Seriously, stop. And you practice it, right then and there. Do one repetition, even if it's just a simulation in your head. And if you absolutely can't do it right now, schedule a specific time to do it later. The golden rule is, don't just keep reading more and more instructions you never actually try.
Next up, A is for analogous. You know that little spark you get in your brain when a new idea suddenly clicks with something you already know? That, oh, this is kind of like moment? That's what we're talking about here.
So what do? You grab onto that analogy and you really inspect it. First, write it down. This new thing, X, is like that old thing, Y, because. But don't stop there. Ask yourself, okay, how are they different? And the most important question of all, when would this analogy actually be misleading? This forces you to think deeper and really understand the new concept.
Okay, now we're at C for conceptual. And honestly, this is the backbone of your understanding. This is the stuff that explains the what and the why. It's the principles, the big ideas, the mental models that everything else gets built on.
So, when you find this stuff, your job is to map it out. Literally, grab a blank piece of paper or open a new note, put the main concept in the center, and start drawing branches to related ideas. Use arrows to show how everything is connected, and this map isn't a one-and-done thing. It's a living document that you keep adding to as you learn more.
Okay, moving on to E, which is for evidence. If conceptual stuff is the skeleton, then evidence is all the muscle and tissue that hangs on it. We're talking about the stats, the case studies, the dates, all the data that proves the concepts are true.
And your action here is a really simple two-step dance. Store it now, rehearse it later. So first, you efficiently store the detail. You just tuck that date or statistic under the right branch on your concept map. Then, later on, you actively rehearse it. You try to recall it to solve a problem or explain it to someone. That act of retrieving it is what makes the memory so much stronger.
And finally, we have R for reference. Now this is different.
These are those super specific kind of low-level facts. Things like product ID numbers, physical constants, specific names, stuff that doesn't really change your understanding of the big picture, but you might need to know it.
The trick with reference info is to get it out of your main notes and into a system that's built for brute force memorization. So you immediately dump these facts into a flashcard app or a dedicated reference note. Then you can use spaced repetition, one of the most powerful memory techniques out there, to drill them in just a few minutes each day.
All right, let's pull back for a second. We've got our labels, we know what action to take for each one. Now for step 3, which is all about putting this together to build a super focused and incredibly effective learning session every single time.
And this is actually super simple. Before you even start a session, you decide on your main goal. Is your main focus today going to be practicing a new skill? Or is it about mapping out a complex concept? Deciding this up front helps you control how much new stuff you try to take in. Then, when you're done, you do a quick check-in with yourself.
And this is the killer question you have to ask yourself at the end. It's the ultimate test. What did I add to my procedure skills, my conceptual map, and my evidence and reference bank today? If you can answer that question, you know for a fact that your time was well spent. You didn't just consume information, you created real knowledge. So, what are you going to add to your knowledge bank today?